start off with Chef Calvin. Winning on a show like Beat Bobby Flay was one of the many steps that put you on into the spotlight. How do you use this platform to highlight and preserve the culinary traditions of your heritage?
You know, I think it's very important to always stay true to yourself, right? And I think for me, yes, Papi. I think it's very important for me to stay true to yourself, right? I think in the beginning of my career, I was doing classical French food, I did Italian, I did American. I think that was just the way that a culinary student went. It took me about 20 years of cooking to finally go back to my roots and see that that was what was most important to me. I ended up working at one of my first Latin restaurants. It was called Blend on the Water. I helped them open up in Long Island City, Queens, where I invented the arepa, which I beat Bobby Flay with, which was incredible. And now people think I just have arepas in my pocket. One of my great friends saw me today for the first time in a while, and he said, when I look at you, I think about food. I think that's a good thing, right? And as I come through, I like to introduce myself with food. Food is my love language. It also helped me get my incredible wife. It also teaches me a lot on a day-to-day basis because my son tells me what he wants to eat on a regular basis. So I think for me, going back to your question, it has to stay with finding ways to speak to people, learning about their cultures, learning about the recipes. For me, food is nostalgic. So if I'm ever missing home, I'll cook pernil con arroz con guandules and some beans and totones and maduros, things that are gonna get me back to my own roots. Finding ways to keep people constantly remembering about their culture is finding ways to collaborate with others, which is something that I don't do, which I wanna do, which is why I'm here to network as well and meet these incredible chefs. But always, I think, goes back to just staying true to who you are as an individual.
All right, you made me hungry by talking about pernil. And if you don't follow Chef Kevin on Instagram, you'll see that he's the personal chef to his son, who gets to pick the meals at home. So the next question will go to Chef Yadi. You focus on natural foods and holistic health throughout your content, your recipes, and your work. How do you balance modern health trends with traditional recipes and ingredients from your culture?
So I want to say that there's nothing new under the sun, first of all. And a lot of what's modern is actually cultural appropriation and colonial mindset that tries to take over and rename something like kale is the new black, right? But I just want to say that our ancestors ain't new to this, they true to this. So when we look at modern trends like fermented foods like, kimchi and kombucha and sauerkraut and these things that are super expensive now at the stores, I think about things like tepache from Mexico, which is fermented pineapple skins, or nixtamalized corn and tortillas, or I think about pickles from Haiti that is delicious, a delicious condiment. I see some yes in the audience, right? With cabbage and carrots and scotch bonnet peppers. Or I think about the cebollas encurtidas on my mango, okay? Just the act of adding vinegar is a fermentation process. So I think a lot of my work is, I have a great friend in the wellness space, Melanie Santos, who says, remember who the fuck you are, right? Is a lot of this is remembrance, is remembering that we come from this and preserving knowledge. So, my mom and my grandmother came to this country and worked like in factories sewing, and they walked so I could run and sell sofrito nationwide, right? And say that sofrito is healthy. Maybe it's not a smoothie or a salad, but sofrito is a blend of, I look like a culantro leaf today, but right? It's like a blend of cilantro and culantro and ajicitos and ajo. Or when my great-grandmother was machucando on the pilon, the garlic, right? Machucalo, machucalo, machucalo. Okay. That, letting garlic rest for 10 minutes, it releases the allicin in it. So there are medicinal things that they were doing intuitively. So our food is remembrance and cultural, but our food is also medicine. And so I'm here to reclaim that, and that the representation and knowing that we are allowed to take up space and that we better with our foods.
Wow. We ain't new to this, we true to this, right? I think about that when I see recipes for things like cowboy caviar or ranch water or spa water, and it's like, this is agua fresca, girl. Anyways, Chef Saul, as a chef and a TV and web personality, you have the opportunity to influence a very wide audience. What are some of the ways that you ensure the authentic flavors and stories of your culture are accurately portrayed through the screen?
Well, I think being in here is a blessing, and being in front of the camera is also a blessing. And what I do when I'm in front of the camera is I do what a chef Kelvin does. He stays true to himself. And with that saying, I shared a short story with him outside. As an immigrant, I used to be undocumented for 23 years. I just became an American citizen 3 years ago. So now I'm not in the shadow anymore. So with that saying, that growing in the restaurant industry here in New York City as a Mexican, I always tried to be somebody else because I didn't want to miss those opportunities to become a sous chef, a chef de cuisine, executive chef. Those positions that were for the white kids, right? So I wanted to be like them. I wanted to act like them. I wanted to talk to them. So when I first had the chance to be in front of the camera, I kind of be like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm not white, as you can tell. I'm just gonna be true to myself, and it was my first time making a video, right? And I got so upset with me, trying to be someone that I wasn't, and that I ended up, doing the video like if I was showing my prima, my primo, and everything went wrong that day. So when I find out the whole story, I'm gonna put it short, that I was trying to be somebody that I couldn't be, and then I put everything on the side, and I was being myself. But after I left the studio, I was so disappointed. I was heartbroken. I went home to my wife. I'm like, listen, didn't work out. This is not something that I wanted to do. And then 3 months after, the video comes out, and then I see the video, and I was like, man, I'm so proud of myself for being Mexican, for have the accent. They call me Sofia Vergara of the kitchen. So I was like, fuck it, I love Sofia Vergara. So I think it took me 28 years to stay true to myself. And when I find out, and I took my Mexican cuisine, my heritage, and now what I do is just share that all the Mexican gastronomy as much as I can, and that's what I do now. I show love through food, and now with tacos.
Tacos are also my love language. And I love that you have all shared that the key to success was being yourself throughout all of these different stages of your career and your life at home. I love that. So this is a question for all the panelists. Can you share a story about a dish that is particularly meaningful to you and talk about how that dish represents your cultural identity? We'll start with Chef Kelvin.
Yeah, when I think about, foods that remind me of just life in general, growing up in a Dominican household, is pollo guisado. I think everyone growing up, their mom is their favorite cook, right? I was blessed that I had a dad who was a chef and my mom who was an incredible cook, except unfortunately later on when I started really learning about food, I learned that my mom completely overcooked everything, right? So I remember when I tasted perfectly cooked chicken for the first time, I raised my hand and I said, what bird is this? Because it cannot be chicken. So first time I had a restaurant experience, my mom always told me if you eat a steak or a burger and it's red, you're going to die. Like, that's how dramatic Dominican moms are, right? And I remember working at a French restaurant. It was called the Water's Edge in Queens, Garde Manger, which is with your first station. You learn how to do the salads and all the cold appetizers. There's a 70-year-old Dominican next to me teaching me who can't speak, but thankfully food is universal and I can watch. And he's cutting up a piece of steak for steak tartare and he puts a piece in his mouth and I'm like, you're gonna die. And he looks at me and says, I've been doing this all my life. So I called my mom, I said, Mom, you're a liar. One thing you never do, right? You call your mom a liar. Don't ever say this. I said, Mom, this is what experience, this is what happened. She said, be careful. From that moment on, I opened up my eyes, my ears, and my mouth, and I started to taste the world of food. But I always come back to that pollo guisado because it gives me that comfort. Changing it back to making it a little bit more modern, again, speaking about my arepas, the arepas have become a piece of me. It's not a Colombian arepa, and it's not a Venezuelan arepa, and it's not a Dominican arepa. What I love about food, and hopefully you guys can all agree, food is universal. There is no plagiarism in food. Either you make it better or you fuck it up. Those are two things that you can do, right? So by doing my version of an arepa, I remember being on the show Be Bobby Flay, and people were like, congratulations on the win, but that's not an arepa. Fine, it's an arepa with quotation marks because they're the exact same ingredients, cooked in a different style, and I put a pollo guisado on top, or joropa vieja on top, or finding ways to, I put guacamole, pico de gallo, lime-scented sour cream, a cotija cheese. But I promise you, when you taste that bite, it's gonna remind you of everything that you've had in your life and bring you back to that one moment where you discovered that how important food was. So I think that's what is special about a food. But that arepa is a party in your mouth.
I love that. For me, I think, one of my, and probably all of our favorite season is upon us, like closer than not, which is the holidays. And a lot of us, our celebration foods are very defining of our family memories and histories in la cocina. So I would say that before culinary school or restaurants, the first kitchen line I was ever part of was the pastel line, right? Ooh, making pasteles in the holidays, and everybody had a job, right? Like you had the masa with the root vegetables, like with the yuca and the plátano inside of it. You have the anato seeds for making the oil. You have the meat grinder out that, you grind and season your meat. And then the younger cooks get thrown on what I call the hilo line. If you're on the masa or you're on the meat, you a pro. That's like your grandma, your tia, your mom, somebody that has been in it for generations. I started holding the threads around my neck. That's where they started me, right? So the thread around the neck, then it was on the wax paper, then it was helping to put the bijol, the anato on the masa, then it was the meat. But as I transitioned through each station, knowledge is being passed down through that when you're being taught. So I literally have these memories of the matriarchs in my life, from my great-grandmother to my grandmother to my mother to myself, making pasteles in the kitchen. And it's almost like a family crest, because it's like sofrito, right? Everybody family has a little bit of a different recipe. And in the holidays, you gift pasteles, or you go to someone's house, I'm gonna get down on their pasteles today, coquito, right? And it's a really special time of year. You make like 100, that's my first experience factory working too, because you make like 300 pasteles to fill up the entire freezer. Listen, that was my preferred pregnancy food. I was in the summer eating pasteles from like the winter. It's something that is a very deep culinary memory to me, and it has a lot of emotion in it. Now that my great-grandmother and my grandmother have passed on, literally every time we make masa, or I see, now it's me and my mom, and I became a mom last year, and I think about the things that I will pass down to my daughter, who has the name of my grandmother and great-grandmother as her first and middle name, right? And so how will we preserve legacy? And for me, oral storytelling recipes, that's a preservation of legacy and what we get to pass down. So pasteles for the win.
To me, it's very simple. It's a tortilla, right? I remember growing up in my home, at home, and I remember my mom doing the tortillas fresh to order. So I grew up in a restaurant. My grandma used to own a restaurant, a small little restaurant, not like this one right here. So part of my to-do, like if I wanted to play outside, I had to help my mom, in cleaning tomatillos, going to the market, helping with the meat, whatever it was possible. By my reward, it was the tortilla. I remember she was, making the tortilla by hand, and she used to get so annoying because everybody would go and grab one tortilla, and I was that kid that I wanted to have that tortilla, because having a fresh tortilla that you just made is like having fresh bread that just came out of the oven. It's amazing. So I love so much tortilla, as you can tell, that at Cantina Ruptar, where I currently work, not for long because I'm about to open my restaurant in Elizabeth. No, I'm kidding. I'm going to be working there for a long time. Because I love my job, it's incredible. It's I have the best team, the best boss. Boss, if you're watching this, it's just a joke. But it's true, I'm opening my restaurant in Elizabeth. It's called La Única. That's my grandma and my mother's restaurant name in Mexico. So I'm bringing that love to here. But anyway, going back to the tortilla, right? Because I know you guys are hungry and the food is there, and me too, I'm hungry too. So I started working at Cantina, right? And lately you have to be very different than the others to survive in the gastronomy industry. You have to be Instagrammable. You have to make people talk about you. And how do you do that? Sometimes you come up with crazy ideas, and those crazy ideas even they can burn you or make you better. So I ended up making the largest commercial taco in the whole world. 22 pounds. I went to Telemundo in Miami. I did it for 26 pounds and I did it for 26 inches. So I broke the record on TV. And the reason why I made that large taco, right, it's because I love tacos so much that I wanted to make it bigger. But not just that. That taco is made to be for groups, for families, for friends to share. And people don't understand that behind that crazy idea, but the whole point it was to have a plate in front of you so you can share with the people that you love. So I would say the tortilla and now what I call the biggest taco. And also that biggest taco got me through a lot of TV. I've been to Good Morning, I was on the show, but thanks to the big tacote I got. It's like the arepa of chef, that's my tacote. So food opens your doors and they also close it, so I think it worked out. I got a lot of hate from my Mexican paisanos. They were like, what the fuck are you doing? You're destroying our gastronomy. I'm like, man, you're not in my shoes. So you have to make it up. I have 20 people in the kitchen that they need a job, that they need to feed their families. And as a chef, you have to be creative. If you're not creative, you're done. And behind me, I now I run 5 restaurants. I don't want to show off again, but I do. So I have over, I would say, 75 cooks. So if I don't get my shit together, some people are going to get laid off. So my job is to make sure my people have a job. And that's with food. So I have to be very creative and funny sometimes.
These stories are so beautiful as you talk about essentially as you're passing the plate down to your family members, you're also passing down traditions, cultures, history, to the next generation. And I can really relate to the pastel making. We call it tamales in our home for the Costa Ricans. And I've got my niece in the crowd who's one of the youngest members of our assembly line. So thanks for teaching her. It's a rite of passage. Another question for the panelists, all of y'all. Social media has become a clearly vital tool for chefs and food creators to showcase their work and to connect with their global audiences. Could each of you share some insights or strategies that help you find success on these platforms? Maybe it's the tacote. And how do you make sure that your cultural messages resonate through the digital space?
I think that's a great question because we were just having conversations outside of how to find ways to be new, right? Because our phones eat first. At least that's where I see everywhere, right? Our phone eats first. Don't look at it. We're going to take a picture. We're going to take a video, and everyone needs to know what I ate for breakfast, lunch, dinner, restaurant, so on and so forth. Going back to days of where I've thought of trying to be unique. I remember being in France. I lived in France for 6 months. I won a scholarship where it sent me to work at the Institute of Paul Bocuse. They told me it was going to be in English. They lied to me, and I was the only person in the class that did not speak English. So again, thank God. I looked at people's hands, I was looking at the chef, and thankfully there was only 4 items on my station. But I learned that if I posted on Instagram, foie gras terrine with raspberry reduction, it could have been the most beautiful thing. 100 likes. Cool. Un tres golpe, 20,000 likes. 175 comments of where can I come and get this, and so on and so forth. So I learned then, if I'm not true to who I am as a Dominican, as a Latino, as a Hispanic, people are not going to support me. But I also learned that people are open to trying new things. And as chefs, we try to do things that shouldn't go together, like tuna tartare on top of a tostone. When I did that, everyone thought I was crazy. It was absolutely delicious because of the freshness of the tuna, the contrast of the flavor, the crispiness and the saltiness of the tostone, and the coldness and freshness of a spicy tuna tartare. Who's going to go wrong with that, right? But there are so many people that want to just stick to what's true. When I opened up the first Latin restaurant, rule number 1 for me was I want to show the world that we are so much more than just rice, beans, and maduros on every plate. As great as that is, there's so many more opportunities to learn and showcase the Latin cuisine, which is why I enjoyed that restaurant so much. The name was Blend. It's a blend of Latin cultures. So being able to find ways of doing a citrus crusted salmon with cilantro mashed potatoes and a pineapple butter sauce, finding ways to think outside the box and being able to take a dish like ropa vieja or lomo saltado. And for me as a chef, I like to make food pretty. And not always is Latin food pretty. It's just homey, it's delicious. You know what it's gonna taste like. So when you take that first bite of food, again, I want you to transport to when you're 5 years old and you're eating it for the first time and you're remembering when your mom or your father or your grandmother made it for you, because that's what's important to me. So finding ways that on social media, I try to do as many engagement as I can, asking my audience, what do you want to see? What recipes do you want to learn? Of course, it's the arepa. I'm not going to teach you how to do the arepa, guys. I love you. The arepas and the coquito, those recipes you're not going to get. Everything else I will give you. So it's one of those things of knowing that the people relate to you when you're being true to yourself. So it goes full circle again.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think we are in a little bit of a social media obsessed culture, and sometimes you got to forget about the numbers and the likes and the things, like, and you have to create, first of all, you have to remain teachable and open, right? But like, you got to know, like Carol G says, tu flow no ta de venta, right? Like you are the special sauce, you know, like he's going to make pollo guisado, I'm going to make pollo guisado, you're going to make pollo guisado. It's all going to be different, and it's all going to be each of our flows, right? And remaining authentic and true. So not trying to copy anybody's trend. Like, I'm sorry, but I'm not doing the sliced cucumber with like sofrito. Everybody's like, how do you eat a whole cucumber, right? Like, I'm not interested in doing that, right? But I am interested, right, like in taking, you know, I love my mom's asopao, and I turned asopao into like a risotto dish recently because it's a soupy rice, a soupy type of rice, and we took out some of the liquid and we put some like sorrel shoots on it, so microgreens to look beautiful, because we do eat with our eyes. But I think making people part of the journey, or telling them why I made this like risotto asopao, right? But sharing some of the story about my family, and there's relatability in that. You know, we cannot forget the market share that we have. Like, we're in the New York Latino Film Festival, right? We're not at the Tribeca Film Festival. And everything has its audience, is what I'm saying. And you don't have to try. When we're talking about, when I went to culinary school, how much time do you think they spent on Latin food? 0, right? 0. Like you were saying, they're teaching you how to make Italian food, or they're teaching you how to make French food. Or even when I go to DR, this is why, like, I don't go to resorts, because yo no quiero like Japanese food. Yo quiero un pescado frito, right? Or like, yo quiero pan de coco, yo quiero un yaniqueque, right? And like, that's the thing, and I want us from our cultures to embrace our foods more too. Like, our foods can be the fancy foods, they can be the healing foods, they can be the celebration foods, they can be anything and everything we want them to be. It's the spin that you put to it, right? The creativity, the love, and something original is gonna come from that. So I think that I stopped looking at, I'm happy, like I've been part of videos and BuzzFeed, or I had a cooking show on Food Network where I took people to bodegas and farms and showing them where their food came from, and it got canceled after 1 season, right? But that's not gonna stop my flow. That's not gonna stop me from authentically showing up. That's not gonna stop me, right? That's not, so a lot of times when people say, oh, you're blessed or you're lucky, they don't realize how ready you have to stay all the time, right? And those things are not going to make or break me, but knowing that I'm staying true, that I'm putting on for my community, for my culture. I mean, adobo, sazon, sofrito, like, you know, those are things that there's a million recipes for. If I say, oh, there's a million of those out there, I'm not gonna do Loisa, because who wants to see that? Don't worry about that. Create what's in your heart when the muse sits on your shoulder, and the rest will continue to unfold. So.
Yeah. What was the question again? I'm kidding. We're talking about social media, right? Do you guys follow us already? I mean, come on. Otherwise, we're not going to open that buffet. Guys, chefs, please make sure you guys show your Instagram to them. If they follow us, they can get a meal. Otherwise, they will stay here. No, I mean, social media is just another job. It's a hustle, you know? Like, you know, we as a chefs, you know, we have to worry about labor, food costs, creativity, and then on top of that, we have to make reels. I like it, right? On a slow day, but not on a Friday night or Saturday night. So it's I mean, if you look at my Instagram, Chef Saul Montiel, last time I post something, it was probably months ago. I only repost the stuff that I done because I don't have time to do those stuff. But I know it's very important, so I try to be true to myself, and I also try to respect the other cuisines. I've been cooking Italian for almost 18 years. When someone messed up with a carbonara, I take it personal. But guess what? I go to Epicurious, I make carbonara, and I put chile. So, and I do it because I feel like I have to, because you have to be different in order for you to be known. But also, you want to put something that you're familiar with. For example, to me, El Serrano, El Chile. So I'm going to put something that I know how it's going to taste like, and I know the results. So Instagram, I love it and I hate it. But it's another platform to show how much we care and how much we are proud of being Mexican, Latino, Dominicano, Puerto Riqueño. So I love it and I hate it. It's like Yelp, Yelp it's love and hate. But I think Instagram also put chefs, kind of push us to become better, to be more competitive, to be more creative. So I think it is what it is.
Hard relate to the front row. We have one last question for the group, and then you're released to the mixer. So what advice would you give to someone who's just starting out, especially if they want to use their culinary skills to celebrate and preserve their culture?
Well, at first I want to give a little advice to anyone that would love to get into this business. I think it's important because not everyone has a mentor. I had multiple mentors that I was lucky enough to follow in their footsteps, but what they don't teach you is if you work for, excuse my French, if you work for a shitty chef, you're going to become a shitty chef, right? If you work for greatness, you will become greatness because you will pick up on that habits. You will pick up on those amazing techniques that you would need to succeed in life in general. I grew up watching all these shows like Gordon Ramsay, and all you see is someone yelling at you and cursing at you and putting you down. 20 years ago, that's exactly how those kitchens were. I had things thrown at me. I was called a Dominican handicap. I was called a birth defect. Why? Because I didn't cook an egg properly. What that made me feel was when I become a chef, I will not be that guy, because I was taught to treat others with respect, treat others with love and care. And guess what? That made me a better leader today. There were times in restaurants where I was the second in command, and if I asked someone to come in on their day off, they would always say yes to me. But if the chef asked, then the answer was always no. And I learned the way I was treating people was gonna help me out in life. So I always go by attitude determines altitude. As positive as you are in life, no matter what's going on in your personal life, it will help you succeed, because it's happened to me. There's many times where I've been down, depressed, thinking negative thoughts of my career, or how am I gonna pay the bills this month, or whatever happens. As positive as you are, there is always a great outcome. I think being able to resonate with what I love, and for me, what I love is making people happy through food. And there's times where I just wanna have people over because I wanna share my talent. On Instagram, when I post these dinners of just friends coming over, there's a line of people that wanna get adopted. And I'm like, that line goes through my wife. So my wife will approve all adoption papers as long as you do chores in the house. So, I'm just grateful for the position that I've been put. I'm a kid from the projects. I grew up on 142nd and 7th Avenue, where it was gang violence everywhere. My parents are two Dominican immigrants that came to the United States at the age of 19, and all I wanted to do in life was make them proud. It took me 20 years after that to decide that I just wanted to make myself proud after that. And the breaking point for me was one time, not gonna flex, but I'm just gonna talk real. I'm pulling out of Jennifer Lopez's house. I'm pressing post on Instagram to a collaboration post for the Infinity car. And I just got a check for $100,000. And I started to cry. And the first person I called was my mom, because I missed out on so much. And that's one thing that they don't tell you about this business. You miss out on family. You miss out on birthdays. You miss out on your own birthday. I didn't have a birthday this year because I worked for my clients the whole month. I missed my wife's birthday. I missed my birthday. I missed my mom's birthday. but I made sure that I came at midnight to give her a birthday cake because those are the things that are important to me. So now, I'm a father of 2, I'm a husband, I'm a friend, I'm a son. These are the things that I promised myself later on in life. I called my mom and I said, I just want you to know that I love you and I hope that you're proud of me because all of this I did to make everyone around me proud. As long as she said she was good, that was good for me. So now in my life, I don't miss a birthday. I don't miss any big celebrations. I will cancel work. I need to make a specific amount of money for me to leave my family every day. And if it's not enough, I'm gonna stay home and enjoy and make memories.
I love that. Right? I love that. I'm like, it almost made all of us cry there, like a tear. I think there's so much relatability and rawness and vulnerability in what you're saying, and it's so, so real. Your wife and your child are sitting here with you, and it takes a village. It takes you're in the kitchen on your own, you're showing up on these days so many times by yourself, but it takes so many people. Like you said, it's a roller coaster. And for me, I would just say, like, also don't be afraid to be a beginner at whatever stage you are in life. I went to culinary school in my mid-30s, right? I felt a calling that I didn't want to deny, and I went to school with a bunch of like 20-year-olds, and they had way more energy, way more time. They could take the way cheaper jobs. I had a 9-to-5. I went to culinary school at nighttime and on weekends, and I started doing like volunteer jobs on farms, on community gardens and farms, because I had a dream to share our cultural and ancestral foods with my people. Every time that you're a chef, people will always ask you, where do you cook? Who do you cook for? And I always say, for my people, for my community. You can find me in a community garden in the Bronx or in Harlem or in Washington Heights. And that, I think, ability to just remain open to what was different than everybody else in my culinary class or culinary industry around me was doing, allowed me to remain open to opportunities and see things and reframe it in a different way. Also, traditionally they would say, like, a woman's place is in the kitchen, or la mujer en la cocina, but not in the culinary industry, baby. I'm the only lady sitting up here right now, right? Aside from our moderator, but doors are not just being flung open for women and women of color in the culinary industry. And that's, that's a weight I carry and a representation that I'm very, very proud of, to now within 8 years being also the only female partner in a multi-million-dollar seasoning business, right? And I'm saying I'm gonna be the venture capitalist I wanna see in the future. I'm going to be the one that's going to be giving young Latinas and Latinos opportunities, right? The sweat equity that I'm putting in now, the representation is very, very important to me. And none of that would have happened, all of it, even being here today, had I never just said yes to myself. And being open to starting at whatever point in life. There's all these memes and things going around where, like, Martha Stewart started when she was like 50, I'm just saying that whenever you want to make a pivot in life or you want to make a change, because this was a career change for me, do it. Don't worry about what anybody else is saying. It's who you're looking at in the mirror. And as long as you're good with yourself, be true to you. So I would just say, just start. And also, if you don't have the chance to go to a professional training program, that's okay too, because social media wasn't even at where it was 10 years ago when I started. And there's lots of people becoming, getting a lot of opportunities and a lot of doors just by putting themselves out there on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok. And we're talking about here, the other side of social media is that it does allow you visibility. You also don't have to have these like really expensive on your phone, man. On your phone, you can shoot things. You can shoot a message to someone who you admire and ask for an opportunity. So also don't be afraid to take that real life community aspect. We got, like when my mom came here, she slept on her cousin's couch, right? Until she was able to get it together. And that was a very common thing. Like you would stay with your primas or with somebody until you could get yourself on your feet. So don't be afraid to build that like online community, like even if you don't have that in-person community, or don't be afraid to lean into your in-person community and share your visions and stay true to yourself.
I know, all the points that I wanted to say, she and he already said. What else I'm gonna say now? I in my social media, I get a the question that I get, I would say more often is advice from kids, 18 to 16-year-old kids. They're like, hey, listen, can you give me advice? I'm gonna start the culinary school. I'm like, oh man, you know it's gonna be a lot of money. No, you have the money. If it's yes, good for you. You love food, you love your friends, you love your family, then become a chef. And if you don't, just don't do it, because food is love. So my first advice to someone that wants to be part of this is that if you're ready to give up Christmas, New Year's Eve, Mother's Day, Father's Day, any festivity, if you're ready to give up all of that to become a chef, then be it. But deal with it, suck it up, and make sure that your wife understands that. Because I'm married to my beautiful Dominican, Eliana. She's not here. I asked her to come. She's like, we have 3 kids, it's the city, a lot of traffic. But she understands. She understands, and she let me come by myself. But some wives up there don't understand our lifestyle, right? And they don't understand that Christmas Day is one of the most important days, and Valentine's is one of the most important days for chefs. So we can be with you, and so you make sure that you as a chef, you communicate that with the person that you love, the person you want to share your life with. So my other advice is, before you sign up for the $80,000, $90,000 commitment, I think you should start working in a kitchen. They're going to pay you the minimum, but they're going to pay you to learn. So learn as much as you can. If you can deal with that for like a year, then you're ready to go to school. But besides that, don't get yourself in debt unless you have the money.
All right. Well, thank you to these 3 chefs for their amazing gems, for teaching us how to preserve our culture and how to share it with everyone else out there. So thank you so much.